it was like watching people skating like a playground, like all the hills and the ledges and the street spots and just everything. It was always like San Francisco, and you just kind of really wanted to go there.
That was George Rocha. I'm Jeff. Welcome to Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share their stories, and you get to know your neighbors. George owns and operates Iris Skateboards, a company that recycles used skateboards into new boards and other wooden things like furniture. In this podcast, George talks about his childhood in Rhode Island, which was basically filled with skateboarding in one way or another. Just a quick personal note, my talk with George was like a stroll down memory lane for me. I grew up doing so many of the same things in Texas that George and his New England friends did, so this one was really special for me. Here's George.
I'm from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and what it was like growing up was kind of like a small industrial type town. I just remember kind of always being out in the streets, you know, especially on my skateboard, just pushing around, and it was a different time. So like, as long as you're home when the street lights came on, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted all day. So
When did you start skating?
I started skating when I was 5.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah. And
so that's like almost as back as long as you remember life.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kinda.
Yeah, kinda. It was definitely a memorable time.
How did you start?
My parents bought a skateboard at a yard sale. It was this like clear plastic green, just 70s board, and I think it was around like 1979, 1980. And I would just ride around the driveway on my hands and knees and stuff. And
so it's like an old kind of shitty 70s board.
Yeah.
In retrospect, at the time,
Yard sale board. You know, I imagine when it was new, it was probably sold at a department store, you know, back in one of the heydays. But, yeah, I just got a kick out of it immediately, and then just wheeled around on it everywhere. Yeah.
And then so as you got older and skating kind of evolved in the 80s, I'm guessing then you kind of got your choice of skateboards?
Honestly, like, I was, like, just riding this plastic board. I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on around me in the world of skateboarding yet. Maybe because I was, like, young or... I mean, I'm in Rhode Island. It's not like it's that prevalent there. But once I really kind of got wind of, like, skateboarding and the professional aspect of it, it was kind of like the launch ramp era. So... I immediately was like, oh my God, I need to like launch off something into the sky on my board. And I just like started propping up wood against things in the driveway, and that
so
led...
like flat ramps, not ramps with curvature.
Well,
right?
no,
just
it's
to
like
launch.
It was flat ramps, but then like you'd look through an old Thrasher and you'd see the curved to it. So you'd like hand draw a transition and ask your dad enough questions to figure out how this is going to happen, and just steal his tools and whip some stuff together. And there you are, launching your board into the sky. Yeah.
I'm guessing you had friends doing this stuff with you, or
yeah, I remember there was some neighbor kids who got into it around the same time I did, and there was a local hill. There wasn't many hills where I grew up, so like you met other skaters at the local hill, you know, even if there's only a couple of them.
Right.
You know,
it's like a hub. Everyone kind of flocked to the.
All three of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like that was it. Yeah. And then,
you mentioned Thrasher. What other kind of like outside sources were exposed to?
Well,
or seeking out, I should say.
I remember there was a rental, like a video rental place in my neighborhood called Video Library, and I walked through the aisles there once with my parents going to get a movie, and they had the first Bones Brigade movie. It was like Bones Brigade video show #1, and I was like, oh, I gotta have that, and like that was huge. That was just like opening up a portal to a universe that I didn't know existed, you know?
Help me remember. Is that the one where Lance starts off with Lance Mountain skating off the roof?
No, that's like... Lance on the Roof, I think, was Future Primitive. I think that was the second one. The first one had Tony Hawk on the cover. It was like a contest photo of him doing Madonna, I think. And it was still great. And pool skating, like...
So pretty much, so what other kinds of things were you into besides skating growing up in Rhode Island?
I think back then it was like you either skated or rode bikes. You know, I mean, outside of the organized sports you might have been a part of, you know, like Little League. I did a lot of soccer when I was a kid, but I either would have my BMX with my skateboard on the handlebars or just my skateboard. But other people would just show up at some random spot where there's something to like jump something on, and they'd be on skateboards or bikes or whatever. And like I said, I was just a really little kid, and like I didn't really even know what the world was like outside of that spot, you know, or outside of that moment.
Right. But actually, so as you're getting older, though, like, let's maybe jump ahead to the teen years.
So, like, when I was, like, old enough to kind of go into the city and skate around downtown Providence, that's when I was kind of, like, my world opened a little bit more to what, like, skating actually was. There's skate shops downtown. What was around back then? I think the skate shop was called Watershed. And Skateaway USA. There's two of them. And I would just skate around, and you'd run into skaters and just meet up at spots. And there was an indoor skate park called the Skate Hut that Fred Smith owned, and that was sick. That was a lot of vert skating, because vert skating was huge back then. We're talking around 88 to 91. The Skate Hut was the spot you'd go skate, especially in the winter, because snow on the ground up in Rhode Island.
Right. Well, was Providence close to where you grew up, or?
Yeah, Pawtucket and Providence border each other.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna make a Rhode Island joke, but I won't.
You can. It's tiny. It's
just
small.
Like it technically had to be close, because it's
had to be close.
Tiny
yeah.
State.
Yeah.
But like as a kid, before you have a car or whatever, like it's close enough for you to be able to get to easily.
Well, yeah, as a kid, you'd run into like older kids who had the driver's license, and like I'm 14, but someone who's 16 could like drive to like Newport and like go skate the vert ramp on the beach at Water Brothers, or you'd like go pretty much anywhere you heard there's something to skate. Oh, I heard some little kid has a mini ramp in his backyard out in Coventry. Let's go out there, like, which is like 30 miles away, and you're just sitting in the back seat, can't wait to get there,
Totally. I remember the skating. It's like the skateboard rumor mill. It was like,
yeah,
like someone would hear about something, and like sometimes it wouldn't be true, but like when it was, you're just
no joke. I'd be skating like a quarter pipe in my driveway, and people would pull up and be like, "Oh, I heard you had a quarter pipe." We just drove like 20 miles to come skate this. And you're stoked. You're like, "Yes, no way." Yeah.
As we're sitting here talking, I am thinking about the whole need back then for those bumper stickers. Skateboarding is not a crime, and I'm thinking like my own experiences. Sometimes just, like being a skater in Texas, but also the actual, like, illegal shit we did, like the trespassing. You don't have to implicate yourself, but did you do anything kind of like, oh, there's an abandoned apartment complex, we're going to drink.
Yeah, we did a whole bunch of stuff.
Let's hear
that.
It all.
Like, I remember there was a toy store chain called Child World, and they went out of business. So it was like department store style, like size building, empty, and we broke in through the back and skated the inside of Child World, like making all these old like display racks into like something to skate. Yeah, that was insane. Like we never got busted for that or anything.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. And then there was always the classic, you kind of rob like job sites of plywood and 2x4s, and you build a little something. Like we built a half-pipe actually out of pretty much all stolen lumber. But I mean, we were doing it in the name of innocence and fun. It wasn't as diabolical as it sounds. Sorry, anyone who got set back by that.
So, with magazines and videos, would you say that those, through those sources, like those were kind of your first impressions of San Francisco, or where did those come from?
Most definitely.
What kind of things were you seeing and people and that you like?
It was just like, it was like watching people skating like a playground, like all the hills and the ledges and the street spots and just everything. It was always like San Francisco, and you just kind of really wanted to go there. And like, I don't know, a lot of my favorite skaters came from San Francisco.
Such as?
Well, they may not have been from here, but you see them in the pages. Like back in the day, I was a big fan of Dandra Hobel and John Cardiel, and they were attacking the streets of SF, so that's where you had to be. But my first cross-country excursion actually was to Portland to skate Burnside, which is a DIY skate park under a bridge, under the Burnside Bridge.
Okay.
And I actually was going to stay there, but I got hurt, so I had to flee back home with no money and hide at mom and dad's again, because I was like only like 18,
I was going to ask, how old were you, and did you guys drive?
Yeah,
then?
So the story goes, I skipped high school graduation ceremony to jump in a van to drive to Burnside. And a friend of mine who was older had already done the drive. I was lucky enough to get invited, and it was just like the time of my life.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the trip itself?
The trip was bonkers, and I'm sure I annoyed the piss out of this guy. You know, I'm just like this 17-year-old kid was like, oh my god, this is like the first I've ever been from home ever. So he's just like, great, you know. But once I mean, the cross country trip is like a whole different story. But I just remember getting to Burnside and just having like something I've only seen in a magazine just come to life, and it was insane. It delivered.
Like a fairy tale almost, you know, or like
something. It was
magical.
Nuts. I was immediately out of my element, and like the locals there are so gnarly, and skating there was just so next level. Yeah.
I mean, Portland is I don't like to compare Portland to San Francisco, but it was for you, for an East Coast kid, it was kind of your first taste of the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of how different?
I thought it was. Honestly, I didn't really think it was different because as a skater going like somewhere to skate, being surrounded by other skaters, you kind of have like that feeling of similarity, you know. And no matter how gnarly people were, they were super rad and welcoming at the same time, you know, because kindred spirits were all there for the same reasons. So
right.
I didn't really notice the impact of the differences between the coasts until I like moved here as an adult.
Okay.
You know.
So you went back, you got hurt, and you went back home. Any more to the story of being on the East Coast before you came out here?
So I actually got hurt skating in Portland, so I took a Greyhound bus back to Providence, which was 4 days of another crazy story.
That's another story. Or stories right there.
Greyhound should have its own podcast. It is so nuts.
I mean, if you want to share those right now, go for it.
Yeah.
If not, it's cool.
No, but I went back on the Greyhound injured, and then not till like a couple years later, I actually moved to Tahoe to live in Olympic Valley and ride squaw, because I just kind of got obsessed with snowboarding for a short stint. And then I pretty much moved back to Providence in like 1997, and I didn't really have any plans to go anywhere. I was just going to stay put and, you know, make money. I had a job at the time building skateparks, which had me traveling, so it didn't really matter where I lived.
How does one get a job building skate parks?
So, a job building skate parks starts probably like when you're 10 years old and you make your first launch ramp. No, you just have to really want to build stuff to skate and be really interested. There's not a lot of work. Well, now there is, but back then there's not a lot of work involved. So what you do is you jump on anything locally that you hear going down, like any indoor skate park or hell, even somebody building a mini ramp in their yard. You just go and help out. You just develop the skill. And then it eventually, for me, led to a job building parks with a couple like volunteer efforts to like build indoor stuff. But my first like major park involvement was probably breaking ground. So my buddy Sloppy Sam's Concrete Skate Park Company. That's back in Rhode Island. That's back in Rhode Island, but Breaking Ground, I think, formed in 1999, and I think he ended up selling the company in like 2010. So we had a lot of fun building parks all over the country, which led into like me jumping on building parks with different companies like Dreamland and Grindline and stuff like that, and took me pretty much all over the world, which was great. And then after a while, I just kind of got tired of being on the road, but still would, you know, jump the chance to build the certain parks in the right place that you want to be at the, you know, if there was a park being built in Portugal, I'd jump on it right now because I wanted to go to Portugal, you know. But stuff like that. Iris keeps me busy at the moment, so I don't really need to travel for work so much anymore.
You said international. Can you just drop names of the country, some of the countries you went to?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of building a park in Dingolfing, Germany. I built a couple in. I built one in Prince Edward Island, Canada, and another one in Kitchener, Ontario. Bunch all over the country, especially the Northeast and California. One in Detroit. Tons of backyard efforts. Like, I call them efforts because it's pretty much you just call anyone you know who wants to help out. Hopefully they have skill. A lot of times they do, and we built some pretty nice gems.
Are you doing the labor, the work? Are you doing any of the designing as well?
We're pretty much doing all of it. The designing, like when you're building like a backyard situation, if it's your yard, you're designing it. You know, a lot of that you can do as you go. You know, you don't really need to develop much more than a napkin drawing if you have the skills to take it to, you know, fruition. But when it comes to like a municipality, of course, now you're dealing with like blueprints and all that red tape,
planners and shit like that.
Yeah.
Have you done some of that stuff then?
I've done a lot of that stuff. Working for another company, I've never had to like actually push that paperwork myself, thankfully.
Right.
But I've done a lot of private skate parks locally. Like I did Thrasher Magazine's private skate park. I did Skate Mental's private skate park. I've done some contests for FTC for the cash. It's always great, and it's always like it's a blessing to be able to do that, because it's like art to me.
I was gonna say it's hell of creative,
and it's like, thankfully in a lot of those situations I had a say in what the design is going to be, you know, what the layout is. And I like to think when you're in a space and you know what type of skating you want to achieve in that space, the layout kind of develops itself sometimes. So you always want to work with the person. Like, you never want to be like, this is a design, buy it. You want to work with them. You want to talk to them. Like, what is skateboarding to you? Because it's very different. Some people want like a vert wall. Other people want a mani pad, you know? So that's the beauty of all facets of skateboarding, from riding it to building parks. It's like, what is it to you? What does it mean to you? How do you want to do it? What does it look like? That's all up to you. If someone's trying to tell you you're doing it wrong, fuck that, you know? Yeah.
That was George Rocha. Join us again on Thursday when George will talk about his move to the city and the story of starting his own unique skateboard company, Iris. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me, Jeff Hunt. Our website is storiedsf.com, where you can browse more than 100 episodes, check out all our live events, and visit our store page to help support us. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If that's Apple Podcasts or iTunes, please do us a favor and rate and review what we do. And if you have any feedback for us, or any suggested guests, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.